Recording has started. I will share my screen now. I am sharing my screen and
Mhm.
we're doing music.
Щедрик, щедрик, щедрівочка, he flew the swallow from afar, started to sing loudly loud, asking the master to come out. Come here, O kind master, it's time in the sheepfold, wonders to find. Your lovely sheep have given birth to little lambs of great worth. All of your wares are very fine, coin you will have in a big pile. All of your wares are very fine, coin you will have in a big pile. You have a wife fair as a dove, if not the coin, then the chaff. You have a wife fair as a dove. Щедрик, щедрик, щедрівочка, прилетіла ластівочка, стала собі щебетати, господаря викликати. Щедрий веди, господарю, подивися на кошару, там овечки покотилися, ягнички народились. В тебе товар весь хороший, будеш мати мірку грошей. В тебе товар весь хороший, будеш мати мірку грошей. Тебе жінка чорноброва, хоч не розчіто голова. Тебе жінка чорноброва, щедрик, щедрик, щедрівочка, прилетіла ластівочка.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Anarita Bashalive, along with co-host Dr. Victor Fett, Dr. Katerina Shrey, and our program producer, Professor Larry Shrey. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war on Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, medical personnel, academics, artists, literary figures, and relief workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Libraries and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. If you're joining us live on Teams, please feel free to use the chat to post any questions for our guest. A quick greetings to our viewers in Ukraine from Professor Katerina Shrey.
Цей святочний час вітаємо наших слухачів в Україні з глибоким покліном. Ми далі свідки вашого страшного терпіння і також вашої великої сили. Дякую вам за вашу участь в нашій тижневій програмі.
Thank you. And today's guest will be introduced by Professor Victor Fett.
Hello, everyone, and it is my pleasure and honor to welcome our Christmas guest, Miss Nina Gade from Denmark. She is joining us from Elsinore, the word which is maybe recognizable to some of our viewers.
Yes.
Nina is originally from Moscow. She graduated from Moscow State University in journalism and then from Roskilde University in Denmark in the fields of communication and culture. She is a renowned author, poet. She participated in a lot of cultural activities. She is a founder of the first Scandinavian Russian language journal. And she works now with Ukrainian refugees in Denmark. This is what she is going to tell us about. And in the end of her presentation, we will be reading a couple of her poems in Russian and in English translation. Welcome, Nina. The microphone is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear friends, thank you for the invitation to this online meeting regarding the war in Ukraine and everything concerning this huge European humanitarian tragedy. It is very important to continue to write and update the chronicle of this war, the chronicle of current events, like Dr. Fett calls it. I will also use the opportunity to thank the whole team of people who for almost 2 years, every week, without pauses, has organized those online meetings. Likewise, I want to express my gratitude to everyone who continues to inform the world about the horrible war in Ukraine, what is being done in this regard, what assistance is being provided to Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees, and what still needs. The war continues, and we cannot allow the world to forget about it and its victims. Let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Nina Gade. I'm a poet, writer, literary critic, and a translator of Danish and Russian, living now in Denmark, in Helsingør, the famous town of Hamlet, north of Copenhagen. I was born in the Soviet Union and was one of those idealists who believed in democratic changes in Russia in the early 90s. I was deeply mistaken, and the Russian aggressive war in Ukraine has become my private tragedy. I fully and completely support Ukraine. For that reason, I have cut off and was cut off many contacts throughout Russia. I keep only friendship with those people who think and feel like me regarding the war in Ukraine. As we know, these people still live in Russia, despite the fact that many are afraid to raise their voice openly. I graduated from the Faculty of Journalism in Moscow State University and later moved to Denmark in 1994. When I then graduated in the field of communication, culture, and language from the University of Roskilde, just outside of Copenhagen, which happened to be the town where all Danish queens and kings have been laid to rest, probably since the Viking time. When I came to Denmark, I continued to maintain literary relations in Russia, as well as with Russian-speaking communities in Ukraine and in a number of other European countries, and in USA as well. I have published 6 books of poems and lyrical prose, plus articles and translations of Danish poetry, among other things. Everything has changed after the war. Now I have interrupted all my literary connections with Russia. My so-called second emigration from Russia began in the sense that I have not only emigrated from Russia in a physical sense, but also in a spiritual and moral sense. I no longer in any ways associate myself with official Russia. It is sad and harsh realization that I have come so far away from my motherland because I have always loved Russian language, Russian literature, and I still do. But now I experience how all this is brutally being abused by a disgusting regime of terror whose morality is completely rotten away. I now write anti-war poems and novels which have been published in Ukraine, Lithuania, Latvia, and USA. One of my anti-war poem selections was recently published in Kiev in the anthology Year of Poetry 2023. And this is also one of the ways to support Ukraine spiritually. What I'm going to tell today is not really a report as such. It is a free narration, perhaps a very emotional one, but I would like to share what I have experienced and learned since the war in Ukraine began, because this war changed me a lot like a person. My life will never be like it was before. The rose-colored glasses I probably had before regarding the development in Russia are broken now, because I have never seen so much human grief so close to me. And I could not imagine that my former homeland would become a source of absolute evil. For almost 2 years now, I have had a feeling that I see a horrible dream and cannot wake up. And for millions of people in Ukraine, life every day is the reality of nightmare of death, suffering, grief, and destruction. February the 24th, 2022, split my life into two parts, before and after the war. It's like my past has been amputated and my childhood has been stolen. I remember my mom sang Ukrainian songs for me as a child, and we traveled a lot around Ukraine, which I was fascinated by. And I'm really glad that my parents don't see this tragedy today. They died some years ago. When the war began, I knew I had to do something for Ukraine. It was meaningless just to sit and cry all the time. And it was definitely not enough to write anti-war poems and send money to Ukraine. I decided to look for a job with Ukrainian refugees. And you know that Denmark, like many other European countries, started to help Ukraine in the war against Russia and opened doors for many Ukrainian refugees. All over the country, they began to open places for temporary residence for Ukrainians. And this in itself was not easy task because Denmark is a little country. And from the first days of war, a stream of Ukrainian refugees poured into Denmark. During almost 2 years since war started, Denmark has received more than 28,000 Ukrainian refugees, and more continue to come. The Danish government has previously prepared the population for up to 10,000 Ukrainian refugees in the country. A lot of buildings were refurbished and rebuilt into temporary residence centers for Ukrainian refugees. I got a job like social coordinator in one of the temporary residence centers in Copenhagen. I can describe a little bit how it was organized. 3 buildings were previously used by a company which supplied medical equipment and then moved. The place was not originally intended for housing. Kitchens and showers were built urgently, and the level of comfort is really low there. About 500 Ukrainian refugees live there today. In one of the buildings, it is allowed to have an animal. You know that many Ukrainians, they took their pets with them, a fact Denmark paid attention to. In my opinion, it is very humanistic approach to those people in such sad situation. There are 3 floors in every building and about 40 small rooms on each floor, not more than 8, 10 square meters, and you can imagine how it is cramped in such room, especially when 3, 4 people live in one room. Okay, well, my experience from working in the temporary residence center for Ukrainian refugees is very mixed. On one side, it is really great that refugees got an opportunity to achieve peace in a prosperous country. For many of refugees, it was a question of saving life. But on the other side, it is a hard experience for them. It is not easy to start a new life in a new place, especially when living conditions are not the best. It is a price of silence, mentioned one of the refugees when we talked together. She meant that one of the first things for her was to hear rockets and bombs all the time. It was impossible to sleep and live a normal life. People were really stressed because of the constant sound of explosions. That woman escaped from Ukrainian town Volnovaha, which was firstly bombed by Russians, and many civilians were killed. You probably know that Volnovakhy district is one of the 18 districts of the Donetsk region, and it is a ghost area today, like many other Ukrainian towns and villages. This woman lost her husband in the war. Their big house was bombed, and she showed me a picture of the ruins. She told me also that she miraculously managed to leave the war zone. The bus in front of them was shot to pieces. Many broken human destinies have passed in front of me. I have heard a lot of tragical stories and descriptions from people who came from different Ukrainian districts. Mariupol, Donetsk, Borodyanka, Dnieper, Novaya Kakhovka, Nikolaev, and from many other places. And you know, it actually occurred to me one day that almost all refugees in the center where I worked miraculously survived and received a chance for new life. Many others were unable to escape from the occupied territories. Many were shot and died under the ruins of houses and in burning flats. I will never forget the story of a young man from Mariupol who told me how he tried to find his missing mother and ran through the streets under continuous fire, and it seemed to him that he was participating in a scary computer game. Reality and scary unreal reality were mixed together. Yes, he found his mom dead and took part in her quick funeral in a common grave, a hastily dug ditch where the bodies of the dead were thrown. Then the Red Cross helped this young man to leave Mariupol and reach Poland. Afterwards, he moved to Denmark. But his psychological condition is completely broken. He cannot sleep and talks to himself all the time. And it is impossible to predict how long time it will take him and other people with post-war psychological traumas to recover. And maybe it might never be possible. I can clearly see that even if the war stops one day, hopefully soon, it will still continue in people's hearts and souls for decades and generations to come. The consequences of the war are horrible for thousands, millions of people. Even for them who moved to a new peaceful country, it is really very difficult to start a new life in a foreign country, in a new cultural and linguistic environment. It is hard to say goodbye to your home with a lot of familiar things, to your friends, probably a good job, and a school, if we speak about kids. And if you left someone of you, of your loved ones behind, alive or dead, you will live with a scar on the heart forever. Danish psychologists, they work with Ukrainian refugees, but the waiting time to get such treatment is really long. And there are not enough translators who can speak Danish and Ukrainian. And many Ukrainians don't speak English well enough. Old people from Ukraine don't speak English at all. And it is a big problem in general for Danish society today. People from Danish public authorities, volunteers, doctors, staff in kindergartens and schools, as well as teachers of Danish language, communicate with refugees mainly by Google Translate, and that is not good enough. And that is why I also got more work as a translator. I will mention that in the beginning, the Ukrainian refugees actually refused to speak Russian. It was really hard for them. But slowly they just took a decision to speak Russian because there are not so many Ukrainian translators in Denmark, and it is really important for people from Ukraine to understand what is going on. And now I mainly translate in Russian for them, and they accept it. But thanks to my translations, I have a clear picture of what the Danish authorities requires from Ukrainian refugees, who, in addition to rights, also have many responsibilities and duties. I don't know how it functions in other countries, but it is impossible for refugees in Denmark to get economical help from the authorities without doing anything in return. Let me put it in this way. People are not only expected but required to look for a job and learn the Danish language. It is really interesting to notice that often cultural misunderstandings can occur in this context. For example, I translate a lot for Ukrainian women at the age of 60, maybe after 60, who already in their 50s got a pension in Ukraine. They find it hard to understand that they have to try to find a job in Denmark. But Danish legislation says that men and women under normal conditions only have the right to pension in the mid or late 60s. It is really difficult to explain a social worker in Danish commune that life in Denmark can hardly be compared with life in Ukraine. A 65 years old woman in Denmark is not the same as a Ukrainian woman at the same age, but it is difficult to explain sometimes. In general, many Ukrainian refugees managed to find low-skilled job in Denmark. Statistics show that more than 10,000 Ukrainians have already found this kind of job in Denmark after they came to the country, which is more than a third of the refugees, and it's really a big percent. However, as I mentioned before, it is mostly unskilled jobs. And this is unfortunately the common sad destiny of refugees who cannot speak the native language of the country. They have to forget their diplomas of higher education and start to live a post, work in a kitchen, do simple cleaning, and handle transport services. And you know, the social status is changing dramatically in such circumstances. For many refugees, only a way gradually to achieve a new professional life, good professional life, is to learn Danish. And it is also a difficult task. Danish language is not easy. In particular, Danish pronunciation is difficult for most non-Scandinavian people. Besides, it is extremely difficult to learn language from zero when you cannot have an explanation in your native language. And that's why I later started to work as a teacher in Danish for Ukrainian refugees, and it works really well. I'm in charge of a group of refugees of different ages, including people after the age of 70. And it's really hard for them to learn Danish. Many of my students actually are psychologically traumatized, and you know, I'm not a psychologist, but I have to admit that I consider such work to be partly about that. Because my task is not only to teach them Danish language, but to create a warm atmosphere in the class and to support people with encouraging words. It gives me a lot of satisfaction. I really have a good time with my students. At the same time, I know that the process of learning Danish for them is a kind of, let me put it in such way, is a kind of quiet surface above the turbulent depth of warring thoughts and hot feelings. I know that several women in my class, they have sons in the war, and they smile those days when they manage to talk with their sons, and they look sad and worried when they were not able to contact them. Another student, an old man, a widow, told me with a smile when I informed him that he should go to the language test. It's not a problem. It's only the examination. I won't be shot there. I know that he lived on the occupied territory and protested active against it. One night, Russians came to shoot him, but fortunately, he decided to stay by his friend that night. Next day, he drove away in his old car, leaving the house that he built by his own hands, his beautiful garden, and the graves of his parents and his wife. In my classes, I often ask the students to respond to simple questions about their age, if they are married or not, and if they have children. In Danish, of course, I mean. However, I need to be careful in formulating such questions since I have experienced a situation related to a young woman who lost her husband in the war, came to Denmark with two small children and could not take care of them anymore because of the traumatic shock and stress she got. Therefore, the Danish authorities had to take the children away from her, hopefully temporary. Children among the refugees is a special subject, and they have a special place in my heart. Their lives only began, and it was brutally changed by the war. It is impossible to predict what will happen to them in future. If they get the possibility to return to Ukraine or have to stay in Denmark, can it be possible for them to unite two parts of their life, Ukrainian and Danish, in one? They arrived to Denmark confused and inward looking. Many of those children had lost their fathers in the war, and most of those who still have not lost their fathers are in Denmark without them, since men in general, as you know, of course, have not been allowed to leave Ukraine. Many of the children have experienced very bad things, spent months underground in constant fear, without enough food and water. Some of children stopped to develop, stopped even to speak. Children's war traumas is a particular tragic subject. But as a final remark, I would like to draw attention to the good work among the refugees organized by volunteers in Denmark, including the work with children. Such work is coordinated by the Danish Refugees Council, a non-profit and non-government organization. I used to be a volunteer in one of those temporary residence centers for Ukrainian refugees before I got a job in another residence center and later became a teacher for Ukrainian refugees. I tried a lot. After that, I had to stop. Unfortunately, I had to stop as a volunteer due to my evening working hours. But fortunately, my husband has continued as a coordinator for evening activities for refugees in a residence center for about 400 people. He himself is very enthusiastic in the activities for kids. He loves it, like many other volunteers. The volunteers do a lot with the kids aged around 4 to 12 years old, such as making pancakes or vegetarian sushi in the kitchen, organizing puppet theater, making drawings, playing board games, making Christmas decorations, and a lot of other things. And my husband and other volunteers at the place have developed a close relationship with many of the children at the center, many of whom have lived there almost since the war, the start of the war. It is especially positive for my husband and other volunteers to experience that many of the kids have opportunity during the long period in which my husband and other volunteers has been at the center, really to see how positive kids can change. I will give an example. We know a little girl, charming girl, her name is Sophia. We met her for almost 1 year ago, and this time she was almost speechless and very withdrawn. Today the girl is smiling and is involved in many of the activities. However, some of the older children still get dark in their eyes from time to time. And the same applies to the new children who have arrived in recent months. They are silent and a little frightened. So it takes special attention to reach out to those children. Perhaps they will never return home to Ukraine, but the hope is that it is possible to give them some of the childhood that Russia has stolen from them is still here. And we all try our best to help those children to come back to life, to achieve good things, to enjoy their life again. So there were some items concerning the life of Ukrainian refugees in Denmark and some of their stories, sad stories. I wanted to tell you about it today, but of course I can tell much more, but need to take care of the time. And let me finish my narration with my two poems. I will read them in Russian language, and Dr. Fett will then read the translation in English. He made, after my opinion, really great, fabulous translation. So thank you very much. I'm really happy that those things were translated because it's so deep in my heart, this pain for Ukraine. So I'm happy that many people, English-speaking people today, have the opportunity to read it. Let me start. Мне забыть бы на день один о войне и моей вине, что живу, дышу, и не больно мне, что ребенок мой не кричит во сне, пока смерть весне в соловьиное горло, залив свинца. Все поет колыбельные без конца, свистом пуль и разрывом незрячих бомб. И молитвы один принимает Бог за сошедшихся в схватке. К нему летят души жертв невинных, покинув ад, охвативший Харьков, Луганск, Донбасс, Мариуполь, Киев, и тьма до нас, может быть, докатится, но пока пишет строки эти моя рука, а рука другая в другой стране прижимает сына к себе в огне. Нет конца вине, что бессильно слово поэта вновь, что страшнее снов, самых черных явь, что погибший дед в 43-м дважды убит, что нет больше солнца, смеха, цветов, весны, после ран войны. Мама, больно, ребенок кричит в ночи, и слабее гаснет огонь свечи.
I would like to forget for just one day about the war going on and about my guilt, that I live and breathe, that it doesn't hurt, that my child does not scream in his sleep, while death keeps pouring a flow of lead into a nightingale throat of spring, singing its endless lullaby of whistling bullets and exploding bombs, and God alone hears those who pray for those who fight. And up they fly, those souls of the innocent dead, from hell that embraces Kharkiv, Donbass, Lugansk, Mariupol, Kiev, and might eventually come to us. I write those lines with one free hand, and my other hand is in another land when it hugs my son, so I can shield him from fire, and there is no end to the guilt. A poet's word is powerless, it seems. The darkest reality is worse than dreams. The grandfather killed in 1943 has been killed again. I see no more sun of laughter, of flowers, of spring after the wounds of war. Mom, it hurts. The child screams in the night, and weakening goes out the candlelight.
And another one. Как им другую жизнь теперь начать, нося под сердцем холод замогильный? Дни избывая, плачут по ночам, и если б не война и калачом далекая страна не заманила, для беженцев отель, где горький мед спасенных жизней заполняет соты безликих комнатушек, душу жмет, как и пространство выжженных пустот родной земли, где убиенных сотни. Но надо жить хотя бы для детей. Вон разыгрались в узком коридоре, как рыбки золотые из сетей, на волю ускользнув от злых вестей, отчаяния, безумия и горя. Их матери зовут меня на плов, за Украину поднимаем стопку, а их мужей война кидает в топку. Я год уже найти не в силах слов. И только плачу с ними, плачу только.
How would they start a different life now, carrying graves cold under their heart? They finish these days by crying at night, and if not for the war, this distant country would not lure them with any gingerbread. Hotel for refugees, where bitter honey of saved lives fills the honeycomb of faceless little rooms. It bends the soul like endless space of scorched emptiness of their native land with hundreds killed. You have to live to go on, at least for children. Here in the narrow corridor, they play like goldfish, which escaped from their nets to freedom, away from those bad news of madness and despair and grief. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you
This
very
was
much, Victor.
powerful, and I am very honored to assist you in making this rendering in
Thank
English.
you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank
This
you.
war.
We will give you a couple of moments of rest while panel
course.
and viewers will prepare their comments and questions. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Nina, I want to start by acknowledging your personal pain and sacrifice when you talk about what it cost you to stand with Ukraine, to say your past feels like it's been amputated, your childhood stolen. These are significant losses that are not to be underestimated. So thank you for the sacrifice you have made to stand with Ukraine. Thank you also to you and your husband for your ministry to refugees. My father was sitting next to me during your whole presentation. He had to step away. The entire time you were talking, you described with such empathy and love of humanity the stories that my generation has grown up hearing from what it felt like to flee during World War II. The difference is that you give voice to it. And I think we're actually going to show this presentation to people of my parents' generation, because your depth of understanding and ability to articulate their feelings, their circumstances, their stress is transformative and very healing. Thank you so much for that. And your poems, I'm actually getting emotional. I don't actually know how to react to that yet. I just want to say thank you so much for both your presentation and sharing your art with us.
Thank you for your words. It's so important for me to hear such words because, as I told you, after the war began, I have changed my personality almost because I believed that the world is more kind and more human. But now I live in another reality. But what is important for me and my husband and people who are close to me is just to support Ukraine with all what we can, because this war is just coming through our hearts, and it every day we read the news and we cry, but it's meaningless only to cry. We need to do something. We need to do something, and let it be only one drop, yes, regarding what it should be done, but it is important. And one drop plus another drop, then it will be the ocean. So thank you for everyone. Thank you in many, many ways.
You mentioned in your poem, you said something, but poetry is powerless or something like that. I'm not quoting it correctly.
Okay, but in the beginning,
but it is not. I mean, it is so powerful. It is so powerful. It is. I mean, it is incredibly powerful. I see there are many people waiting to weigh in, so I'm going to step back and yield the microphone to Victor to call on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It means a lot for me. Дякую.
Victor, mute it.
Yes.
Anara, please. I see your hand.
Len was first.
Who was first?
Oh, Leonard, please.
Yes,
Leonard Deutsch, please.
Okay. You need to have some record keeping in order to provide services to the 28,000 people who are in Denmark. Are you concerned about monitoring on the part of the Russians? Do you feel any personal threat that you're under surveillance or anything of that sort?
No, not at all. To be sure, what you're asking me about, you mean if I, like Russian by my nationality, have treatment ill from another side? What do you mean exactly? So I'm sure what I can answer. Me personally, no, not at all. Okay, I will start to answer and then you can just ask me more questions, because every time when I start to work with refugees, I clearly and directly express my position, my attitude to this war. And I'm very honest. I say, yes, I was born in Russia. Yes, my nationality is Russian, but I fully and completely support Ukraine today, and I will do everything to help you. So in this way, I have never met the negative reaction on me from the refugees. Never. Opposite. It is wonderful. And it's really great for me that I get a lot of warm feelings from their side. So not threatened at all. But maybe you ask about something else, please.
No, I meant from the Russian government.
Government, no, but of course I'm aware of that. I will not visit Russia for the nearest future in this way. No, but I just stay in Denmark and I continue my work, and I don't care, to tell the truth. No, no, I don't feel that they follow me or something like that. Maybe I'm not so important still for them, and not so famous, not so, so big figure for their political, but no, not at all.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anara, please.
Nina, thank you very much for your amazing report. It's very rare to see what is happening with the refugees at this level. And thank you very much for your beautiful poems. I hope
Thank you.
people can actually learn more about this. Maybe they actually, especially in Ukraine. And my question is that what actually, what do you think about your colleagues who help refugees like you in your country, in Denmark, and other European countries? Are they united? Are they actually trying to do something jointly? And my second question, I am actually surprised at what you can see, that you can see what's happening at grassroots level. We could not read this in newspapers. It's not visible issue. And what is your recommendation? What kind of recommendation you can offer for European countries and Ukraine, how they can address family, gender issues, how they actually may think about women's empowerment in this situation? I think your comments might be and recommendations might be very, very valuable for the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your nice words and for your questions. I will try to answer. First of all, I can really feel through my work with the refugees that everyone in Denmark really try to unite the efforts to help the refugees. I translate a lot in the communes, and I can really feel the atmosphere that all the official workers just try to support Ukrainian refugees, try to help them in many, many ways. The same with the doctors, because I translate a lot in the hospitals, and they try their best also to help people in this way, to send them to some investigations in the medical way. There are many aspects in all of that. In general, people are not tired of the war. Some people say, okay, the Europeans or maybe people in the USA will soon be tired of the war and stop to support refugees. I cannot feel it in Denmark. People continue to help. People feel in the same way. I've never heard some negative comments around it. Oh, those refugees, we're out of them. No, no, no. There are still a lot of help, moral help, enthusiastic work with the refugees. And regarding your second question, I think that we are still collecting a lot of methods, a lot of experiences, how to work with the refugees. Because one thing is a theory and another thing is the practice, how we can do that in many, many levels in society. And I think we need to exchange our experiences better, because now maybe there are many countries, they open doors for refugees and they try to do their best, but they don't communicate so much with each other. And I also will be happy to get some more experience from volunteers and other people from other countries, how they work with the refugees. Of course, there are different legislations. As I mentioned, in Denmark, it's a lot of things that refugees have to follow. It's not so easy just to get economical help and do nothing. Let me put it in this way. They have to be active. Maybe in other countries, it's another rule. But we need to cooperate better. And I think we're getting more experiences and we're getting more clever in this field. And probably we will find out how we can exchange our experiences better. If you have, maybe I didn't answer fully on your question, but then ask me more questions. It's just in general. Maybe it was not fully answered, but just then supply with more questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Nina. Do we have more questions, please, from the viewers or the panel? We have quite a bit of viewers today. Mostly we're watched in in recording. Please formulate your questions to the speaker. I have one question meanwhile, which is another painful subject, of course. But Nina, have you observed, like we hear from Europe, any supporters of Russia in its war in Denmark? Are they visible and vocal, like in many other countries?
Actually not. There are not really visible supporters of Russian war in Denmark. There were in the beginning, I will put it in this way, I will start to answer this question through the personal optic. Yes, in the beginning of the war, I could read some unpleasant comments in Facebook from the people who were on my contact lists. And this is the classical comment, where have you been those 8 years, but I deleted such people and they don't disturb me anymore. But it was maybe 5-7 people among 600 of my contacts through Facebook. And I mean also, of course, first of all, people that are living in Denmark, Russian-speaking people in Denmark. So it's only maybe 1%. So I deleted them and finished the subject. But if we come back to the whole situation in Denmark, there were many official manifestations in support of Ukraine, but I have never heard, I have never met, and never noticed, not a single one manifestation supporting Russia and the Russian war in Ukraine. I will also mention that even cultural Russian organizations were closed, cancelled, and went underground. The very important example is, for example, the Russian Center of Culture and Science. It was closed for several months ago after they existed maybe around 50 years in Copenhagen. Now it is closed. So I think the whole attitude is such that all Russian, how can I put it, Russian culture, Russian language is completely not so popular anymore, And before there were possibilities to learn Russian language in universities and maybe some gymnasium, colleges, but people don't choose to learn Russian today. But however, I want to mention just like information that in the beginning of the war, in Danish academic circles, there were maybe a few outspoken voices who favored some kind of appeasement policy towards Putin and the war. And these academics were also to some degree used in the public media, but then such voices they just not they are silent today after how the war developed. So not at all in Denmark, they're really not aggressive supporters of Putin's war. No, not at all.
Thank you, Nina. And I see the hand raised. Dr. McAllister, please. Bob.
Yes. Thank you for this presentation. I really appreciate hearing from someone who is a refugee, because we actually have a tri-state organization in the area where we're from that's raising money for Ukrainian refugees. So we've been involved in this. My question is, and I think it builds a little bit on Victor and Ara, we're seeing anti-immigrant, anti-refugee sentiment rising across Europe, and even in the United States. You've seen the Alternative for Germany Party. You've seen riots in Ireland, Kurt Wilders in the Netherlands. I think most of that, especially in the European context, is aimed at Muslim populations. Are you seeing any hostility toward Ukrainian refugees in Denmark, or have you heard about anything in Poland or anywhere else in Europe?
No, no, not at all. But I can also mention that maybe the life of refugees in every European country is still like different from other countries, because when you come to the country, it's like you just involved in a very special linguistic and mental environment, and things just function in their own way. So no, I really didn't and don't notice what you have mentioned, but as maybe you can supply with more detailed questions, because
No, I'm
don't.
just wondering if what your
No,
experience has been like.
no,
I
no.
just know that anti-immigrant sentiment is growing in Europe. And like I said, I think it's mostly targeted at Muslim populations. The riots in Ireland, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, I think were targeted them. And
Mhm.
it's just reassuring for me to hear that Ukrainians aren't experiencing the same kind of thing.
No, not in Denmark at least.
Good.
No,
Good. That's good news.
that's good.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you very much. If we have more questions, please ask them. And if not, we have been here exactly an hour. That's time for everyone to go back to Christmas
I believe Carol
festivities, I
Smith. I
hope.
believe.
And oh, Carol, please, Dr.
Mhm.
Smith.
Hello.
Hello.
I mostly lurk in these meetings. I listen. I'm not Ukrainian. I don't have connections to Ukraine. I'm a professor at Marshall. I teach counseling and I teach trauma counseling. I'm so impressed with what you're doing. You have no idea how beautiful it is, because you're putting into practice the practical things that people need, like um, finding ways to emerge from the trauma, creating opportunities, creating connection. Those are just so important. The communication itself is just ridiculously important. I have friends, and I'm trying to find the website while I'm talking to you, which is not a good thing to do. Um, I have friends who are in Ukraine. One is Ukrainian, one is American, and they are counselors as well. And they are starting a center for trauma therapy in Kyiv. Um, they have purchased the land for it, and they're raising funds to build the buildings. They're already providing services in other people's buildings. Um, of course, I can't find the website. Of course not. Um, but they will be presenting in February, one of them in February and one of them in March, on this very same M Ukraine talk show. And I think each of us doing exactly what you said, it's a drop of water and a
Mm,
drop of water and a drop of water.
mm,
And before you know it, it's not just drops of water, but it's a trickle and then a stream
exactly.
and then a river and then an
Exactly.
ocean.
Exactly.
And I think we, you know, never, never, never tire of doing good in the world.
Exactly.
When you were speaking, I was thought, and I don't know who said this, a famous person said something to the effect of, do as much good as you can for as long as you can, any way that you can. And
Exactly.
you're doing that. And I just wanted to encourage you and to let you know that what you're doing, I feel it in my heart, and it encourages me to keep doing the little things that I can do from here to
Exactly.
contribute to the good of Ukraine, because they didn't ask for this. They didn't ask for any of this.
Exactly.
And we we may not be able to help every single person, but every single person that we help, we not only help them, but we help every life that they touch thereafter. So we
Exactly.
do make a difference. We make a difference.
Exactly. Thank you for your so important words. I feel the same in my heart. Let it be some small things in the beginning. Then other people will support it and continue to do something. But never stop doing something if you believe it's only one drop. Of course, the whole ocean is consist of drops. And it's so important just to do it, because we keep people, we keep human. And it's so horrible to see such people in grief, and just be in this situation that you can do something, and some people, they think, I will not do it because it's not enough. Of course, maybe it's not enough. Everything is not enough, yes, to help people in such tragedy, but
Yes.
do something. Just say a good word, just smile, just embrace, just help, and they have a chance to just continue their lives, to find themselves again, because they're so confused, they're so unhappy. So it's so
Yeah.
important, and I'm so happy that we built a bridge today, yes,
Yes.
between
Yes.
Denmark and USA, and I'm so happy. I have so good in my heart. I'm so happy and grateful for Dr. Fed and other people, yes, who keep us going. Just keep us going and help every day, one step every day, and it is so great result. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm
Thank
really
you.
happy. I'm really happy
Thank
today.
Thank
And
you.
we are happy to have you here. Thank you, Nina. It was remarkable presentation.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
I am also very happy that I had a chance to translate your beautiful poems
Me
and
too.
include them in Kiev Anthology, which will be on its way to you next week. So a little
Thank you.
drop, as you said, a
Yes,
little word, a poem, a line.
exactly.
Always, this is what we can do and will continue to do. We
Thank you, dear
thank you
friends.
from our heart, and wish all the very best in this holiday season and for the new upcoming year, which, as we all hope, will be От перемоги, рік перемоги.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you, my
God
dear
победы.
friends. God
The
be
dear,
the gloria to Ukraine.
God bless
See.
Ukraine, God bless America, and I will ask Dr. Shrey to say our customary greeting to our Ukrainian friends in this holiday season.
Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава.
Gloria to Ukraine! Героям слава!
Дорогі браття і сестри в Україні,
В Україні.
ми зберігаємо вас у наших щоденних думках і молитвах, найкращі побажання в цей святочний час. Нехай милосердний Бог тримає вас у своїй опіці. До наступного тижня. Прощаємося.
Прощаємося. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you.